The fire alarm went off at 6:43 a.m. in Building C, but it wasn't because of a real fire. The Nexus system had just tried to process two identical purchase orders from different departments and short-circuited trying to figure out which one was legit. Double billing, double shipping, pallets showing up with the same part numbers but different priority codes. That's when I knew we were in deep trouble, but nobody else had a clue what was coming. But I'm getting way ahead of myself here. Name's Michael Davidson, 48 years old. And for the past 15 years, I've been the guy keeping Titan Manufacturing's digital backbone from collapsing like a house of cards in a windstorm. Before that, I spent 7 years in the Army Signal Corps, which is where I learned that when systems fail, people die. So you build them right the first time, and you damn well maintain them. Last Tuesday morning, my phone rang at 5:30 a.m. Wasn't the company emergency line, it was my son Derek calling from his dorm at Arizona State. "Dad, I got the interview," he said, and I could hear the excitement in his voice even through the sleep fog. "Boeing wants to talk to me about their aerospace engineering program, full scholarship if I make it through." I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. Derek's been busting his tail for 3 years, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working weekends at a pizza place to help with expenses. Smart kid, way smarter than his old man, but college costs what it costs. I've been pulling overtime every week for 2 years, banking every extra dollar for his tuition. "That's fantastic, son," I told him. "When's the interview?" "Next month. Dad, if I get this, you won't have to worry about the money anymore." After we hung up, I lay there in the dark thinking about all the late nights I'd spent in that server room, all the weekend calls when some manager pushed the wrong button and crashed half the production floor. Every hour of overtime was another step closer to Derek's degree, another chance for him to have opportunities I never had. That's what made what happened later so much worse. 2 weeks before everything went to hell, I was sitting in the server room at 2 a.m., Mountain Dew getting warm in my hand while I traced through network logs trying to figure out why Nexus had randomly given everyone in accounting a 10% raise. Wasn't a system glitch. Turned out Carl from payroll was testing the waters to see if he could slip his new girlfriend a bonus without anyone noticing. I fixed it quietly, documented the security breach, sent a report to Jerry, my supervisor. That was always the deal around here. I keep the digital infrastructure running smooth, and management leaves me alone to do my job without interference. No pointless meetings about synergy and paradigm shifts. No team-building exercises where we pretend to trust each other. Just me, my systems, and the quiet satisfaction of solving problems most people didn't even know existed. Thing is, I wasn't just some IT guy, pushing buttons and hoping for the best. I was the architect. When Titan brought me on 15 years ago, they had 3 different production management systems that couldn't talk to each other. A payroll database held together with digital duct tape, and vendor management that consisted of Excel spreadsheets and prayer. I built Nexus from the ground up, using everything I'd learned keeping communication networks running in Bosnia when mortars were falling and equipment was failing left and right. You don't build systems for sunny days. You build them for when everything goes wrong at the worst possible moment. Nexus wasn't just software running on some server in the basement. It was architecture. Triple redundancy, military-grade encryption, biometric security protocols that I'd adapted from classified networks. Production scheduling, inventory management, payroll processing, quality control databases, safety monitoring systems, vendor communications, shipping logistics, everything flowed through Nexus like blood through arteries. And every single access point required my personal authorization. Not because I was on some power trip, but because I'd seen what happens when you give too many people the keys to critical systems. Some 22-year-old intern clicks the wrong button during a software update, and suddenly your entire production floor is down for 3 days while you try to rebuild everything from backup tapes. So yeah, maybe I did expense a few $1,000s every quarter for what I called training courses. Security certifications, enterprise licensing agreements, zero-day vulnerability workshops. The finance department approved them automatically because they trusted me, and because the alternative, having our systems compromised by hackers or crashed by incompetence, would cost a hell of a lot more than $12,500 in training. My supervisor, Jerry, understood this. He'd been around long enough to remember the dark days before Nexus, when a simple inventory update could take 3 hours and half the time the numbers were wrong anyway. The CEO, Richard Winters, understood it too, even if he never said much about it directly. He just knew that since I'd arrived, the manufacturing floor ran like clockwork, deliveries went out on time, and customer complaints dropped to practically nothing. But understanding is a fragile thing, and it only takes one person who doesn't get it to tear down what took years to build. Cassandra Winters showed up on a Monday morning in late September, wearing designer heels that clicked against the concrete floor like a countdown timer. Fresh MBA from some expensive school, 29 years old, and the newest VP of operations at Titan Manufacturing. Also happened to be married to Richard's son, which probably had nothing to do with her rapid promotion from recent college graduate to executive management. Word around the plant was she'd gotten kicked out of her previous job for trying to modernize a family business that had been running successfully for 50 years. Something about implementing agile methodologies and disruptive innovation until the disruption put them out of business entirely. But here she was, strutting around the production floor like she'd personally designed every machine, talking about digital transformation and leveraging synergies to guys who'd been building aircraft components since before she was born. On her second week, she cornered Jerry by the coffee machine and asked, "Why is this Michael person charging the company for random training courses?" Jerry, bless his heart, tried to explain. "Because if he stops learning this stuff, our systems get hacked and we're all out of jobs." "But who approved these expenses?" she pressed. "There's no documentation showing management sign-off." "Michael's been handling this stuff for 15 years, Jerry said, starting to look uncomfortable. "We trust his judgment on technical requirements." "Trust isn't a budget category," Cassandra replied. And Jerry later told me her smile looked like she'd just found a $20 bill on the sidewalk. She went straight to finance, straight to compliance, straight to daddy-in-law's office with printouts of my expense reports highlighted in yellow marker like evidence in a criminal case. I knew trouble was coming the minute I saw her march into the executive conference room that Thursday afternoon, carrying a stack of papers and wearing the expression of someone about to deliver very bad news to someone who wasn't her. The countdown had started, and I was the only one who knew it. The meeting was supposed to be about Q3 productivity metrics and employee engagement initiatives. 2 hours of PowerPoint slides explaining why a pizza party should make up for the fact that they'd frozen our cost of living adjustments for the third straight year running. I showed up because the email said mandatory attendance, and after 15 years at Titan, I'd learned not to give management any excuse to write me up for non-compliance. I sat in my usual spot in the back row, nursing coffee that tasted like it had been filtered through old shop rags, and half listening to middle management explain charts they obviously didn't understand. Nobody paid attention to me sitting there. Nobody ever did. I was part of the furniture, the quiet guy who fixed things when they broke and stayed out of everyone's way the rest of the time. That lasted until Cassandra clicked to slide 7 and made my name the headline in 24-point bold font. "Before we discuss engagement strategies," she announced, her voice carrying that special tone people use when they're about to ruin someone's day, "I think we need to address accountability in our operational expenses." The room went dead quiet. My name sat there on the projection screen like an indictment. Michael Davidson. Expense irregularities under review. I felt every head in the room turn toward me, necks swiveling like they were all connected to the same motor. She didn't look at me yet. She was savoring the moment, feeding off the uncomfortable silence like a vampire at an all-you-can-eat blood drive. "I've conducted a comprehensive audit of recent departmental expenditures," Cassandra continued, clicking to the next slide, which showed a breakdown of my quarterly expense reports. "This employee has been using company funds for unauthorized training programs, certifications, and licensing fees, essentially treating our operational budget like his personal education fund." Jerry shifted uncomfortably in his seat 2 rows ahead of me. I could see the back of his neck getting red, which usually meant he was either angry or embarrassed, probably both. "These expenses total $12,500 over the past fiscal year," she went on, with no documentation showing management approval or business justification. Finally, she turned toward me. The whole room followed like dominoes falling in slow motion. "Michael," she said, pronouncing my name like it left a bad taste in her mouth. "Would you care to explain why you've been charging the company for courses and certifications that were never approved through proper channels?" 22 years of military service and corporate experience had taught me that sometimes the best response is no response. Give them enough rope, and they'll usually hang themselves with it. But this wasn't a normal situation, and Cassandra wasn't interested in explanations anyway. "Those aren't training courses," I said quietly. "They're enterprise security licenses tied to the Nexus infrastructure. Every one of them was approved through normal procurement channels and documented in the system architecture files. Architecture files that apparently no one else has access to, she shot back, clicking to another slide. Which brings me to my next point about operational transparency. She didn't wait for my response. I've already discussed this situation with the CEO, she announced, straightening her shoulders like she was accepting a medal for distinguished service. Effective immediately, your employment with Titan Manufacturing is terminated. Please surrender your access credentials and personal effects. Security will escort you out if necessary. You ever been in a room when everyone stops breathing at the same time? The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The fluorescent lights seemed dimmer. Half the engineering staff looked like they'd swallowed their tongues. Our production manager actually started typing on his laptop with shaky fingers, probably updating his resume in real time. But what hit me hardest wasn't the firing itself, it was the timing. Derek's interview was 3 weeks away. His tuition payment was due in 2 months. I'd been counting on that overtime pay, banking every extra dollar for his education, and now it was all gone because some spoiled kid with an MBA thought she knew better than 15 years of operational experience. I stood up slowly, keeping my movements controlled and deliberate. No drama, no theatrics. Just the measured response of someone who'd been through worse situations than getting blindsided by corporate politics. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my security badge, the one that gave me access to every system in the building, every server room, every administrative function that kept this place running. Walked to the front of the conference room and placed it gently on the polished table next to the coffee carafe, like I was leaving a tip for good service. Then I looked directly at Cassandra. Just once. "You have 3 hours," I said quietly. She blinked, clearly not expecting any response at all, much less something that sounded like a warning. "Excuse me? 3 hours before the security protocols lock you out permanently. After that, Nexus goes into automatic containment mode. No administrator access, no system recovery, no manual overrides." The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning cycling on in the next building. "Is that supposed to be some kind of threat?" Cassandra asked, her voice going up half an octave. "It's just information," I replied. "Do with it what you want." And then I walked out. No dramatic mic drop, no angry speech about respect and competence. Just a simple statement of fact delivered in the same tone I'd used to tell someone their parking meter was about to expire. Behind me I heard Jerry's voice. "Wait, Michael, what do you mean containment mode?" But the elevator doors were already closing. Last thing I saw was Cassandra's reflection in the polished steel, all confidence and confusion, standing in a room full of people who were just starting to realize they might have witnessed something catastrophic. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. 3 floors, but it seemed like I was descending into some alternate universe where 15 years of solid work and technical expertise could be erased by someone who'd never spent a single night troubleshooting a crashed server or figuring out why the production schedules were showing impossible delivery dates. What made it worse was knowing this could have been avoided. 6 months ago, I'd put together a complete documentation package. 87 pages of step-by-step procedures, system architecture diagrams, emergency protocols, administrative succession plans. Sent it to Jerry with copies to Cassandra and the executive team. Subject line, critical system information. Please review. Never heard back from any of them. I walked past the security desk where Rodriguez nodded at me like it was any other day. Past the motivational posters about teamwork and innovation that someone had put up in the lobby like decorations at a party nobody wanted to attend. Out the glass doors into the Arizona heat, where the parking lot shimmered like water, and the mountains looked purple against the morning sky. My truck started on the first try. Old Ford F-150 with 200,000 miles and air conditioning that worked about half the time, but it was mine and it was paid for. I sat there for a minute, engine running, looking back at the building where I'd spent the better part of 2 decades. Then I pulled out my personal phone and did something I'd never done before. Called Derek during his morning classes. "Dad?" He sounded surprised. "Everything okay?" "Just wanted to hear your voice, son," I said. "How's the interview prep going?" "Good. Really good." "Dad, are you sure you're okay? You sound weird." "I'm fine." "Listen, whatever happens with Boeing, I'm proud of you. You know that, right?" "Of course I know that. Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "Nothing you need to worry about. Just your old man having one of those days. I'll call you tonight." After we hung up, I sat there for another minute, thinking about all the times I'd warned them this could happen. All the reports I'd filed about single points of failure, all the documentation they'd ignored. Then I started the truck, put it in drive, and headed home to wait for the phone calls I knew would start coming in about 3 hours. It started exactly 2 hours and 47 minutes after I walked out of that conference room. I was sitting on my back porch drinking a beer and watching the desert mountains turn orange in the afternoon sun when my personal phone started buzzing with calls from the plant. First Jerry, then the production manager, then numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. The first sign of trouble hit the morning shift changeover. Line supervisors tried to pull up the afternoon work schedules and got blank screens. They rebooted their terminals, same result. Tried logging in from different workstations, nothing. The system kept throwing the same error message. Administrative validation required. Contact primary administrator. By 11:30, the payroll department was in full panic mode. Half the time clock data from the night shift had vanished into digital thin air. The other half was showing impossible numbers. Guys clocking 47 hours in a single day, machines running negative cycle times, overtime calculations that would have bankrupted General Motors. Sarah from HR called down to Jerry's office. The system says we owe Tommy Rodriguez $47,000 in overtime pay for last week. That can't be right. Jerry, who was starting to realize the scope of what was happening, just laughed that hollow laugh you hear at funerals. No, it's not right. Nothing's right anymore. That's when someone finally remembered the USB drive. I'd left it sitting on my desk drawer, black plastic with a strip of masking tape labeled Emergency Access Protocols in my handwriting. 3 years I'd been updating that drive, keeping it current with administrative passwords, recovery procedures, system architecture diagrams. Everything they'd need to keep Nexus running if something happened to me. Jerry found it and plugged it into his laptop like he'd discovered the Holy Grail. 27 pages of step-by-step instructions, all written in plain English, explaining exactly how to maintain critical systems, how to reset security protocols, how to recover from various failure scenarios. Problem was, every single procedure required my personal biometric authorization to execute. This is useless, Jerry muttered, staring at the screen. Every command needs Michael's fingerprint scan or retinal verification. Down on the production floor, 3 assembly lines had shut down completely. The automated quality control systems couldn't verify part specifications without access to the engineering database. The inventory management network couldn't locate raw materials because the warehouse scanning systems were locked out. Even the employee cafeteria was having problems because the point-of-sale terminals couldn't process lunch purchases without connecting to the central financial database. By 12:15, Cassandra was no longer riding high from her morning victory. She was standing in the middle of the IT department, watching Jerry and 2 other technicians frantically trying to restart systems that kept rejecting every command they entered. "Can't you just override it?" she demanded, her voice starting to crack around the edges. "There is no override," Jerry explained for the 4th time. "Michael built this with military-grade security protocols. The system doesn't recognize anyone else as authorized to make administrative changes." "Then call him. I've been calling him." "He's not answering." That's when Cassandra made her first critical mistake. Instead of swallowing her pride and admitting she'd made an error, she doubled down and called in outside contractors. The first guy showed up around 1:00 p.m. Young programmer with thick-rimmed glasses and a laptop covered in startup company stickers. The kind who probably thought he could hack into the Pentagon with a Red Bull and good intentions. He took one look at the Nexus architecture and started laughing. Not the good kind of laugh. The kind you hear when someone realizes they're looking at something way above their skill level. "This isn't just software," he told Cassandra, shaking his head. "This is infrastructure. Military-grade, custom-built, locked down tighter than Fort Knox. Whoever designed this really knew what they were doing." "Can you break into it?" "Lady, I couldn't break into this with a team of 20 people and 6 months to work on it. Everything's encrypted, compartmentalized, tied to biometric authentication. The guy who built this didn't want anyone else touching it, ever." He packed up his equipment and left, muttering something about security protocols that made the NSA look like amateur hour. The second contractor arrived an hour later, took one look at the system logs, and immediately started backing toward the door. "You need the original administrator," he told them. "There's no way around it. This is like trying to perform brain surgery after you've just fired the only neurosurgeon in the building." By 2:30 p.m., Word was starting to spread throughout the company, whispered. Conversations in break rooms, nervous glances toward the executive offices, people checking their personal email accounts, and quietly updating resumes on their phones. Tommy Rodriguez from the welding department stopped Jerry in the hallway. "Hey, is it true they fired Michael this morning?" Jerry nodded, looking like a man who'd just watched his house burn down. "Man, that's messed up," Tommy said. "He's the only reason half this stuff works around here. Remember when the email system crashed last Christmas? Michael had it fixed in 2 hours. Management would have had us down for a week." Similar conversations were happening all over the plant. People remembering the countless times I'd saved the day, fixed problems before they became disasters, kept the digital machinery running so smoothly that most folks never even knew there were problems to fix. But remembering doesn't restart crashed servers or unlock encrypted databases. At exactly 2:47 p.m., 3 hours after I'd placed my security badge on that conference table, Nexus went into full security lockdown mode. Every terminal in the building displayed the same message: security protocol activated, administrative override required, system status, containment mode engaged. And underneath that, in smaller text that I'd added years ago during a late-night debugging session, "Have a nice day." That's when the real panic started. Production lines grinding to a halt, shipping schedules wiped clean, vendor payments frozen mid-transaction, customer orders stuck in digital limbo. The safety monitoring systems that tracked everything from air quality to equipment temperatures went dark, meaning they had to shut down entire sections of the plant to comply with OSHA regulations. Richard Winters, who'd been in back-to-back meetings all day and hadn't heard about the firing until 3 p.m., came storming down to the IT department like a man whose hair was literally on fire. "What the hell is going on down here?" he demanded. Jerry looked up from his computer, which was displaying the same unhelpful error message as every other terminal in the building. "Your daughter-in-law fired Michael this morning. Now the entire system is locked down and we can't access anything." Richard stared at him like he'd just been told the building was constructed entirely of dynamite. "She fired Michael? The Michael? The guy who built everything?" "That's the one. Where is he?" Not answering his phone. Richard Winters, CEO of an $85 million manufacturing company, walked over to Jerry's desk and very quietly said a word that would have gotten him fired from most churches. Then he pulled out his personal cell phone and dialed my number. I was still sitting on my back porch when that call came through. I looked at the screen, saw Richard's name, and let it go to voicemail just like all the others. The phone immediately started ringing again. I let Richard's call go to voicemail 6 times before I finally decided to listen to what he had to say. His voice sounded like a man who'd just watched his life's work circle the drain. "Michael, this is Richard Winters. I need to speak with you urgently about returning to Titan Manufacturing. We're prepared to discuss a significant adjustment to your compensation package and responsibilities. Please call me back immediately." The next voicemail was more desperate. "Michael, please. I just found out what happened this morning. Cassandra acted without my knowledge or approval. We can fix this." The third one was just begging. "Michael, the entire plant is shut down. We've got $2 million in orders that can't ship, payroll that can't process, and safety systems that won't respond. I'll give you whatever you want. Name your price." I finished my beer, went inside, and typed out a simple text message. "Currently unavailable. Best of luck with your digital transformation initiatives." Then I turned off my phone and went to make dinner. What I didn't know at the time was that things were getting much worse at Titan. By 4 p.m., they'd lost contact with 3 major customers whose automated ordering systems couldn't connect to Titan's database. 2 suppliers had called to report that their invoices were bouncing back as undeliverable. The bank had frozen the company's operational accounts because the daily financial reconciliation reports hadn't been transmitted. Jerry found the 87-page documentation I'd sent 6 months earlier buried in his email archives. He printed the entire thing and spread it across the conference room table like a desperate treasure hunter examining ancient maps. Every page was covered with detailed instructions, system diagrams, troubleshooting procedures, everything they needed to maintain Nexus. Except for one small problem. Every single procedure required administrative credentials that only existed in my head and my biometric data. "It's like he gave us the recipe for chocolate cake," Jerry told Richard. "But every ingredient is locked in a vault that only opens for his fingerprints." By Wednesday morning, the situation had gone from crisis to catastrophe. Production lines that should have been running 3 shifts were sitting silent. The automated inventory system had somehow ordered 50,000 units of a bolt that cost $2.50 each, while simultaneously canceling orders for the raw materials needed to fulfill existing contracts. But the real kicker came when the safety monitoring system started throwing critical alerts. Without access to maintenance schedules and equipment histories, they couldn't verify that any of their machinery was safe to operate. OSHA regulations required immediate shutdown of any equipment that couldn't be certified as properly maintained. Richard Winters found himself staring at a manufacturing facility that couldn't manufacture anything, a shipping department that couldn't ship, and a payroll system that thought every employee was simultaneously fired and due for a $100,000 bonus. That's when Cassandra finally cracked. She showed up in Richard's office Wednesday afternoon, mascara streaked down her face, designer heels replaced with sneakers, because she'd been running around the plant all day trying to fix problems she didn't understand. "I made a mistake," she admitted, slumping into the chair across from his desk. Richard looked up from the stack of customer complaint letters he'd been reading. "A mistake?" "Cassandra, we've got 450 employees who might not get paid this week because you fired the one person who knew how to run payroll. Our biggest customer just threatened to cancel a $15 million contract because we can't deliver parts that are sitting in our warehouse but can't be located by the computer system." "I didn't know," she whispered. "You didn't ask. Michael tried to explain those expenses to you, but you cut him off. Jerry tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen. I've got 3 different memos from the past year recommending we cross-train someone on Nexus administration, but you marked them as low priority." That afternoon, Richard made a decision that probably saved his company from immediate bankruptcy. He drove to my house personally. I was in the garage working on my truck's transmission when I heard the BMW pull into my driveway. Through the garage window, I watched Richard Winters, a man I'd respected for 15 years, walk up to my front door like he was approaching a judge who held his life sentence in his hands. I let him ring the doorbell 3 times before I answered, still wearing my work clothes and wiping grease off my hands with a shop rag. "Michael," he said, and I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. "We need to talk." "Not much to talk about, Richard. Your daughter-in-law made her position pretty clear yesterday morning. She acted without authorization. I had no idea what she was planning." I leaned against the doorframe, studying his face. "Doesn't matter who authorized it. What matters is that your management team just demonstrated they don't understand the difference between an expense and an investment, between technical requirements and training courses, between someone who fixes problems and someone who creates them." "What would it take," he asked quietly, "to get you to come back?" I thought about it for exactly 5 seconds. "You can't afford me anymore, Richard. Name a figure. It's not about money, it's about respect. For 15 years, I've kept your operation running smooth as silk. Never asked for credit, never demanded recognition, just did my job and did it right. Then some kid with an MBA spends 2 weeks looking at spreadsheets and decides I'm the problem." Richard nodded slowly. "You're right. We screwed up." "No," I corrected him. "You let someone else screw up on your behalf. Which is worse." That evening, Derek called from campus. "Dad, I heard Boeing moved up my interview to next week. Apparently they're impressed with my portfolio." "That's great, son. You sound different. Good different, like you're not stressed about something for the first time in months." After we hung up, I sat on my porch with another beer and thought about all the job offers I'd turned down over the years. Cochrane Industries had been trying to recruit me for 3 years. Double the salary, full benefits, stock options, and my own department to run however I wanted. Friday morning, I drove to Phoenix and walked into their executive offices wearing my best shirt and carrying my resignation letter from Titan, the one I'd written but never submitted because I'd been fired first. "We heard about what happened," their CTO said, sliding a contract across the conference table. 40% salary increase, signing bonus, and full autonomy over system architecture. "When can you start?" I read through the terms carefully the way my old sergeant taught me. When something seems too good to be true, look for the small print. But there wasn't any catch. They just wanted someone who could build systems that worked and keep them working. "Monday," I said, and signed the contract. That weekend, my phone started ringing again. Richard, Jerry, even Cassandra left increasingly desperate voicemails. By Sunday, the messages weren't about getting me back. They were begging me to just tell them how to restart Nexus so the company wouldn't collapse completely. I listened to each voicemail once, then deleted them. Monday morning, I showed up at Cochrane Industries with my coffee mug and a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. Same job skills, better pay, people who actually understood the difference between critical infrastructure and optional expenses. 3 weeks later, Derek called with news that made everything worthwhile. "Dad, I got it. Full scholarship plus a paid internship. Boeing wants me to start this summer. I'm proud of you, son." "Dad, whatever happened at your work, it all worked out, didn't it?" "Yeah," I said, looking out my new office window at the Phoenix skyline. "It all worked out just fine." A month later, I heard through industry contacts that Titan Manufacturing had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Turns out when you can't ship products, pay employees, or maintain quality control for 4 weeks straight, customers tend to find other suppliers pretty quickly. Cassandra lasted another 2 weeks after that before Richard finally asked for her resignation. Word is she's working at a coffee shop in Scottsdale now, probably wondering how foam art relates to her MBA coursework. As for me, I sleep pretty well these days. Derek's education is secure, my new job appreciates expertise over politics, and I learned something valuable. Sometimes the best revenge is just walking away and letting incompetence run its natural course. Just took them 3 hours to figure out who was really keeping the lights on.